I kept my mouth shut when they slapped that eviction notice on the table. Instead, I slid across the 1923 water rights deed and watched the color drain from their faces, knowing 35 shiny McMansions were suddenly lakefront property, the Willowbrook. Estates HOA figured they could snatch my grandfather's farm while I was fighting overseas in Afghanistan. These smug suburban aristocrats carved out their perfect little paradise on stolen dirt, patrolled by tennis-clad Karens in golf carts. What they didn't count on was me being an Army Corps engineer. That insignificant earthen dam on my land had been waiting for 45 years for fools to build beneath it. Their arrogance was unbelievable, until the spillway gates cracked open and their luxury homes got their first taste of Texas floodwater. This was going to be the most satisfying fight of my life. Where are you watching from? Drop a comment below, because you're about to see the prettiest HOA downfall ever powered by federal water law and gravity. Let me introduce myself. Jake Morrison, 34 years old, Army Corps of Engineers, third-generation owner of 47 acres of prime Texas soil just outside Austin. My grandfather, pops to everyone, bought the land in 1955, back when Austin was still a sleepy college town where BBQ joints outnumbered tech firms 1,000 to 1. Pops believed in caring for the earth and the folks on it. In 1978, he built a simple earth dam, solid engineering meant to hold rainwater for the cattle and to help neighbors downstream during dry seasons. The Army Corps even guided him on the design. Pops always said the back 40 acres would be priceless someday. For now, they were rolling hills where we ran cattle and I learned to hunt. Then came my tours in Afghanistan, where my work revolved around water management and infrastructure. Building wells and controlling water flow in a war zone teaches you how vital clean water is and how fast people will fight over it. During my second deployment, Pops passed away. The land slipped into a trust handled by my sister Sarah, kind-hearted but out of her depth. She lives in California and knows as much about Texas land law as I do about surfing. She hired Loner Land Services, a property management outfit, to handle upkeep and taxes. Payments went through fine. But here's the catch. Sarah never checked. The actual tax assessments, that was her mistake. And that's where our villain comes in. Margaret Maggie Thornwell, 52, Queen Bee of Willowbrook Estates HOA. Picture a woman in a gleaming white BMW X7 who considers tennis skirts proper boardroom attire. Maggie has perfected that southern charm laced with venom, where every sugary smile hides a knife in your back. Married to City Councilman Rick Thornwell, she knows exactly how to twist rules in her favor. Her reputation? Beautification projects. Translation: forcing out anyone who doesn't fit her dream of suburban perfection. And while her perfume screams wealth, it never quite hides the smell of cigarettes and entitlement trailing her like a shadow. When I finally came home in August 2023, I wanted nothing more than to walk Pops's land again. I rolled down the gravel, drive, past the oak tree where I carved my initials as a boy, expecting pastures and a sunlit dam. Instead, I found bulldozers, cement mixers, and survey stakes littering my back 40. It looked like an invasion. Each crunch of gravel under my boots carried more rage. I stormed up to the foreman. "Sorry, pal," he said with zero remorse. "We've got permits. This is Willowbrook Estates land now." I called the cops. Officer Martinez showed up, clearly uncomfortable, and explained that the HOA had filed an adverse possession claim, while I was overseas. In plain terms, if land goes unused and someone proves they're improving it, they can sometimes claim it. A dusty old law meant to stop abandonment, now weaponized by developers. And that's when Maggie arrived, cruising in on her golf cart like a petty suburban warlord. Her voice dripped with sugar but reeked of deceit. "Your family left this land behind, sweetie," she said, smiling like she was blessing me. "We're just making it useful for the community." But what truly lit my fuse was the creek. Her crew had rerouted the small stream that fed Pops's dam. Every day, the water level fell, undoing 45 years of careful management that had kept neighbors afloat through drought and flood. Standing there, I watched the reservoir drain away while Maggie tossed her final barb. "You should have stayed. Closer to home, soldier boy." That's when I knew. This wasn't about acreage. This was war. I hired the first lawyer I could find. Another mistake. He wanted $85,000 just to challenge the rezoning. Turns out while I was serving my country, Rick Thornwell pushed through a zoning change that flipped our land from agricultural to residential development in record time. Pure corruption. But that's where my Army Corps training paid off. While that lawyer burned billable hours, I dug through county records like I was sweeping for IEDs. And sure enough, the devil was in the fine print. I unearthed Pops's original 1978 dam permits, and they weren't just in order. They were rock solid, gold. Because Pops didn't just throw that dam together himself. Pops hadn't just stacked dirt into a dam. He built it under direct guidance from the Army Corps of Engineers for flood control and watershed management. That meant federal oversight. Knowledge nugget number 1. If the feds help design a dam, it falls under federal jurisdiction. No HOA can touch it. The metallic rush of adrenaline hit me the moment I realized this wasn't just some backwoods property squabble, it was federal, and it got even better. While digging through courthouse records, I uncovered a 1923 water rights deed signed to my great-grandfather, senior rights, to the whole Willow Creek watershed. Older than the county water system, older than the city itself, older than every overpriced McMansion they had the nerve to build on my soil. They weren't just trying to steal land. They were stealing my water. Meanwhile, Maggie was staging her theater. She called an emergency HOA meeting about the dangerous dam and made sure a TV crew was on site. I watched her on the evening news, crocodile tears dripping while she declared, "We're concerned about our children's safety. That dam looks ready to burst." If the reporters had bothered to fact-check, they'd have seen my dam past inspection with flying colors just months ago. But Maggie wasn't finished. She fired up the Nextdoor app, the HOA gossip network, warning neighbors about aggressive disputes and unstable individuals. She didn't use my name, but in a community that small, she didn't need to. The August air was thick with cedar pollen and diesel smoke as I stood on my porch each night watching crews push double shifts. They were racing to finish houses before any injunctions landed. Every morning there were new foundations. Every night Pop's reservoir sank another inch. That's when I rang up Tony Riggs, my old Army buddy, now with the EPA Enforcement Division. 20 minutes with Tony gave me more leverage than my $85,000 attorney ever had. "Jake," he said, "if they're redirecting a natural waterway without federal permits, that's a Clean Water Act violation. And if your dam has federal jurisdiction..." He didn't even need to finish. I started documenting everything. Trail cameras, time-stamped flow readings, photos of every illegal diversion. Sarah kept calling from California, urging me to take the payout and walk away. But this was no longer about money. It was about the crunch of strangers' boots on my soil, about Maggie's heels clicking across courthouse marble like a battle drum, about bitter courthouse coffee that fueled late-night research proving how deep this rot went. Most of all, it was about Pops's dam. He built it to give life in dry years. Now Maggie's crew was draining it into a backyard pond for her McMansion empire. And here's the thing about Texas water rights. They run deeper than oil rights, tougher than mineral rights, and a hell of a lot harder to steal, if you know how to fight for them. Maggie escalated. She rolled out a so-called neighborhood safety patrol, 3 HOA board members in matching polos who parked at my gate like a checkpoint. They snapped photos, logged plates, and filed harassment reports with the sheriff. Then came the nuisance campaign. Noise complaints when I ran farm equipment. Citations for unsightly structures on a farmhouse that had stood proudly since 1962. health violations for a septic tank that had passed inspection 6 months earlier. And then came the dirtiest blow, Rick Thornwell abusing his city council seat to order a wellness check on me through veteran services. Suddenly, I was painted as a troubled veteran struggling to readjust. The social worker who showed up was kind but thorough. She ticked boxes on her clipboard while Maggie lurked from her golf cart, smirking like she was reviewing troops on parade. That same week, the full bureaucratic blitz hit. Building inspector, fire marshal, health department, and animal control all swarmed my place in one day, each one finding violations with price tags attached. The building inspector, Rick's drinking buddy, declared my porch needed $8,000 in repairs. I'd seen this play before. It's the same squeeze tactic. Insurgents use overseas, bury the target in pressure until they surrender, but they weren't the only ones making calls. I had Tony at the EPA digging too. And when he learned Willowbrook Estates never filed a wetlands assessment before rerouting Willow Creek, his ears perked up. Federal law requires environmental clearance for redirecting waterways, even on private property. Skipping it racks up fines at $50,000 a day. Every whiff of curing concrete reminded me I was running out of time, but my research was stacking ammunition. I discovered the HOA's development sat in an Army Corps classified 100-year floodplain. At first, insurance companies refused coverage. The HOA's solution? Divert Willow Creek permanently away from the homes and flood my land instead. Knowledge nugget number 2. Lying on flood mitigation paperwork to secure insurance coverage isn't just shady. It's federal mail fraud, with criminal charges attached. The deeper I dug, the uglier it got. Turns out this wasn't Maggie's first scheme. Back in Houston, her old HOA had been slammed with a $2.3 million EPA fine for the exact same creek diversion stunt. She skipped town before prosecutors closed in and reinvented herself in Austin. Now she was spreading rumors about my mental health and violent tendencies, trying to isolate me before the hammer fell. Maggie's next move was ruthless. She hired a private investigator to dig into my military record and pushed a petition demanding the city condemn my farm as a public nuisance. "We have children playing in these neighborhoods," she told the local paper. "We can't have unstable individuals endangering our safety." But while she painted herself as the victim, I was building allies. Through online forums, I connected with other HOA casualties and uncovered a pattern. Over 3 years, Maggie's HOA had swallowed 6 smaller properties the same way: harassment, zoning trickery, and bureaucratic warfare, always ending with Rick's construction company cashing in. I teamed up with Mrs. Chen, my elderly neighbor whose vegetable garden had dried up after the creek was cut off, and Miguel Santos, whose family farm had been rezoned out of existence by Rick 2 years prior. These weren't isolated fights. This was a coordinated land grab. Every rumble of heavy machinery shaking my farmhouse drove it home. Every dawn I counted cement trucks, every dusk I recorded the dropping water line at Pops's dam. And I was preparing. I installed flow meters at the dam and diversion points, logging exact theft, found 200 gallons daily, worth $47,000 per year in agricultural water rights. I sifted creek sediment through my fingers, gritty proof of destruction no lawyer could ignore. This was theft, yes, but it was also ecological vandalism. Then came the certified letter. The city planned to seize my property under eminent domain. 2 weeks until the hearing. Maggie's quote in the paper said it all. Sometimes you have to protect the community from itself. The pressure campaign escalated. Rick fast-tracked the hearing, and the HOA dangled a $180,000 buyout for land worth nearly $900,000. Translation: take pennies or lose it all. The local paper published a smear piece, Troubled Veteran Blocks Community Progress, with photos that made my farmhouse look derelict and me like a wild-eyed shut-in. Maggie's masterstroke was the staged protest. 20 mothers with children posed near my fence line. A professional photographer capturing tear-stained faces with my home looming ominously in the background. The viral hashtag, Protect Our Kids. On Channel 7, Maggie clutched her pearls. Our children deserve safe neighborhoods, not whatever trauma he brought back from war. She was right about one thing. I had brought something back. The ability to recognize psychological warfare and the skills to fight it with precision. That's when Tony Riggs called with a bombshell. The EPA had already launched a federal investigation into the Willow Creek diversion based on my complaint. And Maggie's history? Her Houston HOA had eaten a $2.3 million fine for the exact same scam. Federal environmental crimes follow the perpetrator across county lines. While Maggie was live streaming Sympathy Pleas, I was piecing together how her entire empire rested on fraud. Their construction loans depended on inflated valuations and guaranteed water rights. If those rights reverted to me, their rightful owner, the development would collapse financially. The irony was perfect. They'd stolen my water to boost their land value, and now that theft was set to drown them, the cracks were showing. Maggie's desperation bled through when she waved a $400,000 cash offer under my nose with a 48-hour deadline. I refused. Next, she flew to California to pressure Sarah with a sob story about her unstable veteran brother. That backfired immediately. Sarah might not grasp Texas land law, but she knows me. She called, laughing. "Jake, some tennis-clad lunatic tried to bribe me. I told her if she contacts us again, I'll call the FBI." While Maggie alienated allies, I was gaining them. Amanda Cross, an environmental lawyer who took pro bono water rights cases, joined forces with me. Together, we rallied downstream farmers. Miguel Santos produced records proving his family's use of Willow Creek since 1887. Mrs. Chen unearthed photos from the 1940s showing her grandfather's garden watered by the same creek. The Audubon Society stepped in when we showed them how the diversion had destroyed nesting grounds for protected birds. You want federal attention? Start killing endangered species. Meanwhile, my own reconnaissance, old Army habits, revealed Pops's dam had more secrets. The original 1978 design included an emergency spillway system with hydraulic gates, dormant since 1982. One midnight test confirmed the system still worked. Its purpose? Controlled flooding to restore natural flow. I calculated the numbers. 2.8 million gallons required. Current reservoir capacity? 3.1 million. The math was flawless, and Maggie's latest blunder sealed her fate. Her crew started pouring concrete barriers to permanently block the original creek. That gave me perfect justification. September rains were forecast. The stage was set. I stood at the spillway, controls at sunset, Pop's journal in hand, reading about how he'd once opened the gates to help neighbors in a drought. His words crystallized my choice. Time to act. On my third trip to the courthouse, buried behind a stack of 1979 assessments, I found the missing piece, the original flood management covenant tied to Pops's dam. Its wording was simple but devastating. Operators shall maintain natural seasonal flow to preserve downstream agricultural rights in perpetuity. Not only did I have the authority to act, it was my duty. Amanda uncovered even more. The HOA's insurance applications were riddled with lies. They'd sworn there was no seasonal flood risk, and that all agencies approved the diversion to secure $47 million in coverage. Knowledge nugget number 3. Lying on insurance filings about environmental hazards isn't civil trouble. It's federal mail fraud, and it carries prison time. Every new discovery made the web unravel faster. Rick's construction company wasn't just the builder, it was the project's main investor. Every house raised on my stolen land fattened his bank account. And the kicker? He never once recused himself from city council votes that benefited his own project. Then Tony sent me the EPA's findings, and I nearly snapped. The creek diversion had wiped out every Guadalupe bass in Willow Creek, a protected species. Texas Parks and Wildlife had documented it, but the report conveniently disappeared in Rick's office. They weren't just stealing, they were erasing an ecosystem. The final smoking gun came from Amanda's banking contacts. The construction loans had been secured with fraudulent environmental assessments claiming the diversion was temporary. Banks were told the creek would be restored post-construction. If the water rights reverted to me, the loans defaulted instantly. $12 million gone. That night, I found Pops's old journals in the attic. One entry from 1980 read, "Opened spillway today, helped Santos Farm and 3 others survive the dry spell. That's what neighbors do. Pops never built that dam for profit. He built it for the community, and that was exactly what Maggie had. Stolen, not just land or water, but 45 years of trust and neighborly cooperation." My engineering review confirmed what I already feared. Maggie's creek diversion had created an upstream flooding trap. When the heavy rains arrived, redirected water would surge back into the neighborhoods. The old creek bed had once provided natural flood control for the whole watershed, and my spillway was the only safe tool left to manage seasonal surges. The clock was suffocating me. Meteorologists predicted September's rainfall would be the strongest in 7 years. If I trusted the legal system to catch up, the flooding would happen anyway, devastating homes. But if I acted first, I could control it. A managed spillway release would reveal the natural floodplain without risk, proving the HOA project violated federal law. Standing at the controls with Pop's journal in my hand, the truth struck me like lightning. This wasn't vengeance anymore. It was duty, restoring the balance that had nourished this valley for generations. Maggie's schemes had destroyed lives. Miguel Santos lost the farm his family had held for a century. Mrs. Chen's ancestral garden died without water. 3 other families were forced to sell off homesteads through Rick's eminent domain. Tricks. But with federal investigators due in a month, the timing was perfect. If I showed them the floodplain firsthand, it would expose every violation in black and white. The smell of old hydraulic grease around the controls reminded me this system had been built to endure. Pop had engineered it for exactly this moment, when someone would need to protect the creek and the community that lived by it. As dark clouds stacked on the horizon, the decision hardened. I would open those gates in his honor. You don't open a dam recklessly. This wasn't revenge. It was a military op with legal authority, environmental backing, and community support. I built a team. Amanda Cross handled the legal framework, filing new federal complaints to guarantee media presence. Tony Riggs secured EPA attention, ensuring inspectors would see what he called a natural flood demonstration. Miguel Santos compiled decades of downstream damage, giving sworn testimony that the diversion had crippled farms. Mrs. Chen offered her land as a staging site, her credibility beyond reproach. Amanda's legal brilliance shone. She filed an emergency water rights motion, arguing the dam covenant bound me to restore seasonal flows. We weren't breaking the law. We were following it. Here's the truth most don't know. Agricultural water rights often outrank residential ones, especially when you've got ironclad evidence that predates development. My own preparation was textbook Army Corps. I mapped a precise spillway. Plan, controlled release at 6 a.m., ramping up over 4 hours, peaking by mid-morning. Calculations showed it would restore the floodplain without harming anything, except Maggie's illegal concrete barriers. Safety was everything. I posted warnings a full day ahead, alerted the fire department, and notified neighbors in English and Spanish. This wasn't chaos. It was a controlled return of water to its natural path. Amanda contacted reporters while Miguel rallied neighbors to witness the event. The strategy was clear. Control the story before Maggie spun it as unstable vet terrorizes suburb. Our intel network was straight from a spy novel. Mrs. Chen tracked HOA chatter through her gossip network. The local waitress, Miguel's cousin, reported City Hall's closed-door meetings. An Army buddy at Fort Hood ran drone surveillance for legal evidence. While I overhauled the hydraulics with new parts, Amanda launched financial strikes. She alerted insurers about false filings, pushed regulators to review Rick's loans, and prepped whistleblower reports on conflicts of interest. The beauty was timing. Storms forecast in 72 hours, EPA inspectors in 36, agricultural officials lined up to document. A perfect storm, literally and figuratively. But I knew Maggie too well. She'd lash out under pressure. So Amanda built legal counters for every dirty trick, restraining orders, smear campaigns, even a fast-tracked court hearing. Meanwhile, I archived evidence, photos, sworn statements, historic maps, and secured it in federal filings. I crafted evacuation plans no one would ever need, just to show we were acting responsibly. Amanda's economic warfare hit where it hurt. She tipped regulators about shady loans, notified the state attorney general of insurance fraud, and drafted a civil RICO suit. Here's another fact. Multiple agencies striking at once cripples corrupt developers faster than any lawsuit alone. I serviced every valve and gate under light flow, the hiss of hydraulics and smell of machine oil filling the evening air. Pop had built this thing to last. I stocked the farmhouse with supplies, expecting Maggie's counterattack. Amanda filed orders barring interference. We used encrypted radios to coordinate like soldiers on patrol. As I ran the final checks under building storm clouds, the timing aligned perfectly. Heavy rain in 48 hours. Federal inspectors in 36. Maggie scheduled for her TV spot in 24, where she'd no doubt smear me again. Everything was set. Dawn would bring justice and restore 45. Years of stolen water. That night, Maggie's desperation boiled over. She hired private security to ring my land. Not mall cops. Tactical wannabes dressed like mercenaries. My trail cams caught them sabotaging the spillway at 2 a.m. One tried stuffing quickset concrete into the hydraulics while his buddy kept watch. Thanks to Tony's tip, Deputy Rodriguez was waiting in the dark. The arrest was priceless. They claimed they were protecting the community, but explaining away a bag of concrete at midnight wasn't easy. Maggie doubled down on TV, dressed in Sunday clothes, her voice trembling as she painted me as a broken soldier turned threat. "This man learned to weaponize water overseas," she sobbed, "and now he's targeting children." Rick backed her up as a city engineer, warning of dam failure, conveniently omitting that my dam had passed every inspection for 4 decades. But while they played victims on air, my surveillance was recording every break-in, every sabotage attempt, building an ironclad case of conspiracy. Tony told me federal agents were already wiretapping Rick's office. The rot was deeper than I'd imagined. The legal blitz came next. Rick arranged an emergency hearing for 6 a.m. with Judge Walsh, his golfing buddy, ready to play ball. Amanda uncovered their ties, but we knew the deck was stacked. If they couldn't stop me by law, they'd use corruption. Maggie also staged a safety patrol, families camping with signs and live streams at my fence, spinning it as moms versus a dangerous vet. But Miguel was ready. He brought 30 farmers, Mrs. Chen gathered historic evidence, and Amanda rallied environmental groups. The battle lines were clear. Their smear campaign versus our proof of stolen water rights. Sabotage escalated. Someone dumped concrete into the spillway channel to cause real flood risk if I opened the gates. That wasn't vandalism. It was attempted murder. I worked through the night with a jackhammer, clearing every chunk, documenting it all. Exhaustion burned in my veins, but I refused to quit. Then Rick abused his council powers, declaring my dam an imminent hazard. Fire Chief Martinez pulled me aside. "Jake, politics are forcing my hand. You've got 6 hours before they move in. Make them count." Meanwhile, Amanda's fraud filings paid off. The state froze all HOA insurance policies. Without insurance, construction had to stop. Money pressure was finally hitting Maggie and Rick. The EPA moved its inspection, up 24 hours due to sabotage reports. Agents were now inbound. If the gates opened under their watch, it would be federal evidence. Maggie's last card was the cruelest. She called Veterans Affairs, claiming I'd threatened suicide. At dawn, a VA social worker appeared at my farmhouse. Just as I was prepping, I had to prove my sanity while preparing to flood a subdivision. Sarah called from California, begging me not to do it, her voice breaking. For a moment, doubt cracked my resolve. Then I found Pop's last journal entry about standing against bullies. My will hardened like steel. Sometimes you flood the valley to save the creek. At 7:02 a.m., with federal agents present and the sunrise burning orange, I opened the gates to 25%. The sound wasn't destruction, it was life. Willow Creek flowed again in its rightful channel. Miguel knelt by the stream, tears streaking down his face as he cupped the water. "This fed my grandfather's farm for 60 years, he whispered. Maggie exploded, shrieking for my arrest, but EPA agent Sarah Kim shut her down cold. "Ma'am, he's operating his dam lawfully." Maggie live-streamed her hysteria, crying that I was flooding homes. But the water wasn't hitting a single house. It was flowing exactly where nature intended. News choppers circled, reporters interviewed farmers, and Maggie's narrative unraveled live. When Rick raged into his phone about millions in property value, forgetting Amanda had him recorded, the whole scheme began collapsing in real time. My engineering review only confirmed my worst fear. Maggie's diversion turned Willow Creek into a ticking bomb. Heavy rains would funnel back into the subdivisions, trapping whole neighborhoods in a flood zone. The original creek bed had been nature's safety valve, and my dam spillway was the last safeguard left standing. Time was suffocating me. Forecasts warned September would bring the heaviest rains in 7 years. Waiting for lawsuits to catch up meant disaster for hundreds of homes. Acting now meant control. A managed spillway release would expose the floodplain without risk, proving Maggie's project was built on federal violations. Standing at the control panel with Pop's old journal in my hands, clarity struck me like lightning. This wasn't about revenge. It was about duty, protecting the valley, the families, and the creek itself. Maggie had destroyed more than land. She'd erased livelihoods. Miguel Santos had lost a century-old farm. Mrs. Chen's ancestral garden withered dry. Families forced off their property by Rick's dirty eminent domain tricks. But with federal investigators inbound, the timing was perfect. If I revealed the floodplain firsthand, it would unravel everything they'd built on lies. The smell of old hydraulic grease clung to the controls, a reminder that Pop had engineered this system for exactly this moment. He knew someone someday would have to defend the creek. With storm clouds stacking above, the decision hardened. I would open the gates in his honor. Opening a dam isn't reckless. It's precision. This wasn't a vendetta. It was a coordinated operation backed by law, science, and history. I built a team. Amanda Cross managed the legal battlefield, filing federal complaints to guarantee the press would show. Tony Riggs locked EPA attention, framing it as a natural flood demonstration. Miguel Santos gathered generations of damage evidence. Mrs. Chen volunteered her land as staging ground, her credibility untouchable. Amanda's legal brilliance shone. She filed an emergency motion proving the dam covenant bound me to restore seasonal flows. We weren't breaking law. We were upholding it. Here's what most people don't realize. Agricultural water rights often outrank residential ones, and ours dated back before the city existed. My prep was textbook Army Corps. Precise release plan starting at 6 a.m., ramping up safely. Over 4 hours, peaking by midday. No chaos, no destruction, only nature returning to balance. Warnings posted in 2 languages, fire department alerted, neighbors notified. Amanda coordinated reporters while Miguel rallied witnesses. The strategy was airtight. Control the truth before Maggie could paint me as some unhinged vet with a dam. Our intel network was straight out of a spy thriller. Mrs. Chen tracked HOA gossip. Miguel's cousin at the diner overheard City Hall's closed meetings, and an old army buddy at Fort Hood flew drones for evidence. While I serviced the hydraulics, Amanda struck financially. She tipped insurers to fraudulent filings, flagged Rick's shady loans, and prepped whistleblower reports. Timing was flawless. Storms due in 72 hours, EPA inspectors arriving in 36, state agriculture officials lined up to document. A perfect storm, literally, but I knew Maggie too well. Pressure made her dangerous. Amanda anticipated everything: restraining orders, smear campaigns, fast-tracked hearings. Meanwhile, I archived every shred of proof: maps, affidavits, photos, sealed, in federal filings. Evacuation plans drafted, just to show we were responsible. Amanda's economic warfare hit home: insurance frozen, regulators alerted, civil RICO drafts ready to land. The tactic was clear. Multiple agencies hitting at once breaks corruption faster than any one lawsuit. The dam prep felt like combat deployment. I tested every valve, every gate, machine oil and hydraulic hiss filling the dusk. Supplies stocked, farmhouse fortified. Amanda filed orders barring interference. We used encrypted radios like we were back on patrol. Storms were 48 hours away. Federal inspectors, 36. Maggie's scheduled TV interview, 24. Everything aligned. Dawn would bring justice and restore 45 years of stolen water. But Maggie wasn't finished. That night, she sent in her hired muscle, not guards, mercenary wannabes in tactical gear. My trail cams caught them trying to sabotage the spillway at 2 a.m., one stuffing quick-set concrete into the hydraulics while another kept watch. But thanks to Tony's warning, Deputy Rodriguez was waiting in the dark. The arrest was priceless. Explaining a bag of concrete at midnight didn't go well on camera. Maggie panicked, doubling down on the news. She appeared in Sunday Best, voice trembling as she painted me as a broken veteran turned threat. "He weaponized water overseas," she sobbed, "and now he's targeting children." Rick backed her as a city engineer, conveniently skipping the fact that my dam had aced safety inspections for 4 decades. But while they staged crocodile tears for TV, my surveillance captured their every sabotage attempt, building an ironclad conspiracy case. Tony confirmed federal agents were already wiretapping Rick's office. The rot ran deeper than I ever imagined. The next play came fast. Rick secured an emergency 6 a.m. hearing with Judge Walsh, his golfing buddy, stacking the deck. Amanda uncovered their ties, but we knew corruption was their only card left. Maggie staged her safety patrol, families camping at my fence, with signs and live streams painting me as a danger to children. But Miguel countered with 30 farmers, Mrs. Chen with historic records, Amanda with environmental groups. The battle lines were drawn, their smear machine versus our hard proof of stolen water. Then came sabotage. Someone dumped concrete into the spillway channel, a move that could have caused real flooding if I opened the gates. That wasn't vandalism. It was attempted murder. I spent the night with a jackhammer, clearing it all while documenting every detail. Exhaustion burned like fire, but I refused to give in. Rick abused his city post next, declaring my dam an imminent hazard. Fire Chief Martinez pulled me aside, his voice low. "Jake, politics are forcing my hand. You've got 6 hours. Before they move in, make them count." Meanwhile, Amanda's filings froze HOA insurance, cutting off their money lifeline. EPA inspectors moved up their schedule due to sabotage. Agents were now inbound. If I opened the gates under their watch, it would be undeniable evidence. Maggie's last card was cruelest. She called Veterans Affairs, claiming I'd threatened suicide. At dawn, a VA worker showed up at my door while I prepped the dam. I had to prove my sanity while prepping for a federal showdown. Sarah called from California begging me to stop, her voice breaking. Doubt cracked my resolve, until I opened Pop's last journal entry about standing against bullies. My will turned to steel. Sometimes you flood the valley to save the creek. At 7:02 a.m., with federal agents present and sunrise igniting the sky, I opened the gates to 25%. The sound wasn't destruction, it was rebirth. Willow Creek surged back into its rightful channel. Miguel fell to his knees, cupping the water, with tears streaming down. "This fed my grandfather's farm for 60 years, he whispered. Maggie shrieked for my arrest, but EPA agent Sarah Kim shut her down cold. "Ma'am, he's operating lawfully." Maggie live-streamed her meltdown, but the water touched no houses, only her illegal barriers. News choppers filmed farmers celebrating, neighbors witnessing truth. Rick, screaming into his phone about millions lost, forgot Amanda had him recorded. Their scheme collapsed live, under the weight of evidence and their own lies. Restoration and community resilience with local food, environmental education, and veteran support services. We raised money for a water rights legal defense fund that's already helped 6 other communities fight back against corporate theft. My favorite part, kids swimming in the creek where homes were supposed to be built, splashing in water that flows free because a community stood together. Every Sunday I visit Pop's grave and bring creek water in Amazon jar, just like he used to do when he checked the flow after heavy rains. "Thanks, Pops," I tell him. "The creek's singing again, just like you said it would." The Legacy Project ensures this victory lasts forever. The Willow Creek Conservation Trust now owns development rights to the entire watershed, creating a permanent buffer zone that prevents future commercial development. No one will ever steal this water again. But here's the beautiful twist. Maggie's Houston. HOA faced federal RICO prosecution based on our case. Families across 3 states filed similar water rights restoration lawsuits. What started as one veterans' fight became a movement for environmental justice nationwide. From my porch each evening, watching that creek flow exactly where it belongs, I'm reminded that some fights are worth everything you've got. Sometimes you have to flood the valley to save the creek, but you don't do it alone. You do it with your community, your neighbors, and people who believe clean water belongs to everyone, not just whoever has the best lawyers and the most corrupt city council connections. If you're fighting HOA overreach, environmental destruction, or bureaucratic bullying, don't give up. Document everything. Find allies. And remember, the law is on your side when you're protecting the land for future generations. Drop a comment and tell me your HOA nightmare story. I read every single one and reply when I can, because these fights are easier when we support each other. Hit subscribe if you want more stories about communities fighting back against corruption and winning. And remember, your voice matters, your vote matters, and your creek matters too. Next week, I'm telling you about the city that tried to steal my neighbor's solar farm. So she cut power to City Hall during the mayor's wedding reception. That's a story about a different kind of power and how one engineer turned the lights out. On municipal corruption, water finds a way, justice finds a way, and communities that fight together win together. Willow Creek flows free, y'all, and it always will.